Hey, welcome to day 269. We're in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Really, we're just going to be in Matthew and Luke. A lot of repetition, so I'm just going to narrow it down to a couple things here. So let's start with Bethlehem. In Matthew 2, 4 through 6. Where is the Messiah supposed to be born? In Bethlehem in Judea, they said, for this is what the prophet wrote. O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah, for a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people Israel. So they were looking at Bethlehem. Not only were they looking for the Messiah, they knew the Messiah was supposed to come from Bethlehem. And they knew about the time. So if you look at Micah and any of the other prophets that called for the in Isaiah saying that he's going to be born of a virgin, then it points out that it's Bethlehem in that time frame when Jesus is supposed to be born. So I'm just wondering at this point, 2,000 years later, what are they still looking for? It's past time. So, and even Jesus later on is going to call them a bunch of morons for not knowing what was right in front of them. So that's about Bethlehem. And then we talk about the killing of the children. Matthew 2, verse 16. And it says, Herod was furious when he realized that the wise men had outwitted him. He sent soldiers to kill all the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, based on the wise men's report of the star's first appearance. Herod's brutal action fulfilled what God had spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A cry was heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning. Rachel weeps for her children, refusing to be comforted, for they are dead. So even the prophecy of that happening was fulfilled. So if you go to Exodus, and of course it fell out. Exodus 1, here we go, 16. When you help the Hebrew women as they give birth, watch as they deliver. If the baby is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, let her live. So there were 2 times, I think, when Pharaoh went through and was trying to kill the baby children. At least there's one there. And let's see. And they didn't do it. He said, why haven't you done this? And then he said, then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people, throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the Nile River. And then after that, chapter 11, verse 5 of Exodus, all the firstborn sons will die in every family in Egypt, from the oldest son of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the oldest son of his lowliest servant girl, who grinds the flour. Even the firstborn of all the livestock will die. Okay, so every time that Satan, or not even Satan, people do bad things, rebel against God, God turns that back around onto them. The children are another issue. So, and when you get to Revelation, you have Satan trying to mirror what God has done with the Trinity. And you have Satan, you have the false prophet, and you also have the Antichrist. So, Satan doesn't have an imagination really, and he just tries to copy to deceive all the people of the world. And God's going to allow the people to be deceived, the bad people. God's going to use that deception against them. Now, children of God, another point here. Now we're in the New Testament. We already talked about the Old Testament, showing how many different ways God's trying to reach everybody, not just the children of Abraham. He's trying to reach everybody. So now we're in the New Testament. So let's start marking down things that talk about everybody. So Matthew 3:9, over and over again in the Gospels, it says this. Don't just say to each other, we're safe, for we are descendants of Abraham. That means nothing, for I tell you, God can create children of Abraham from these very stones. And the point that Matthew is trying to make is that God can do the impossible. So if he wanted to make the stones children of Abraham, he would do that. He could do that, breathe life into them. Okay, and the point is, it isn't just blood. It's not even blood. It's if you choose to follow Christ, you are children of Abraham. And we'll get into that more. There's not just this one. Paul talks about it as well as we get into Acts and a whole bunch of other things. And you're going to see that recurring thing. And again, this is a conversation. And it's all about Christ. And whoever calls on the name of the Lord is going to be saved. This whole book screams that. Now, if you haven't figured that out yet, you haven't been paying attention. Now, let's talk about the lake of fire. It's like, how already we're in the lake of fire? Matthew 3, verse 12. He is ready to separate the chaff from the wheat with his winnowing fork. Then he will clean up the threshing area, gathering the wheat into his barn, but burning the chaff with never-ending fire. In Luke 3, verse 9, it says, even now the axe of God's judgment is poised, ready to sever the roots of the trees. Yes, every tree that does not produce good fruit will be chopped down and thrown into the fire. Verse 17, he is ready to separate the chaff from the wheat with his winnowing fork. Then he will clean up the threshing area, gathering the wheat into his barn, but burning the chaff with never-ending fire. Okay, never-ending fire. We're talking about the great white throne judgment. So, if you look in Revelation, find it here real quickly. The final judgment, Revelation 20, 11 through 15. I'll just read this real quickly. And I saw a great white throne. This is why it's called the great white throne judgment. The one sitting on it, and the one sitting on it. The earth and sky fled from his presence, but they found no place to hide. I saw the dead, both great and small. The dead, both great and small, standing before God's throne. And the books were opened, including the book of life. Ta-da! And the dead were judged according to what they had done. So the dead have not been judged yet. Where are they? They are in hell. Sheol, Hades, whatever you want to call it. And they were judged according to what was recorded in the books. Everything is recorded in the books. Your thoughts, your movements, your desires, your needs, your wants, your doing, your motivation. The sea gave up its dead, and death and the grave gave up their dead, and all were judged according to their deeds. Then death and the grave were thrown into the lake of fire. This lake of fire is the second death. So the dead are already in hell. They die a second death by being thrown into the lake of fire. Anyone whose name was not found recorded in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. We've already talked about the promise that God has made that you call on the name of the Lord, your name will not be blotted out of the book of life. End of story. God cannot break his promise. We've already talked about that. Your name is in the book of life. You've called on the name of the Lord. End of story. It cannot be blotted out, regardless of what you may do. When we talk about in here saying your actions, you need to do good things. You call on the name of the Lord, start doing good things. The good things don't save you, but you are saved because of what Christ did. End of story. Regardless of your screw-ups after today. God is not bound by time. And you are saved regardless of what is in the future. That doesn't mean go out and screw around. That doesn't mean that. But you're still saved. End of story. Anybody who wants to refute that has to say that God is a liar. End of story. And I have lots of friends who believe you can lose your salvation. You choose the mark of the beast, then there's a problem. But that's why there's a rapture before that happens. To save us from ourselves. That is your day 269. And I hope you got something great out of that. I'll see you tomorrow.